I call this Town of Adams Board of Selectmen meeting to order, Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. The Board of Selectmen meetings are recorded and televised live on Northern Berkshire Community Television, channel 1303. Is there anyone else in the audience who plans on recording the full meeting or part of the meeting? And we have our Berkshires here. Okay. All right, next on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Can everyone please stand and join the board in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, this evening there's no minutes to approve. We'll move right on to public comment. Anyone in the audience who would like to address the Board of Selectmen, please come forward.
Hello, Carol Foster. I only want to speak on one topic, and that's the ratification that you postponed from the last meeting.
Mhm.
I can speak on it now, or if you'd rather, I can wait until after you've done all your discussion, and then if they still have concerns, I can speak before you vote.
Can we speak now? Just,
Okay,
okay.
okay. There are too many conflicts in this town. And David Reinmiller has, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 positions with this town. I know that he got guidance from the Ethics Commission, and I don't think they were given correct information, so some of their guidance may not be appropriate. Some of their guidance also was that he needs to not do some of the things that he did. He can't be the code enforcement inspector for the health department and also be on the board of health, but yet that's what we have now. He's not a special town employee. He claimed to ethics that he was, and I know that he's relying on a decision made in the 80s when special town employees first became a thing that a town could do. But this town, I haven't looked at the minutes to verify it, but this town made a blanket designation that all employees for the town would be special employees, and that's not legal. You can't designate it blanket like that. And I think the town knows that, because after that date, the town has continued to make individual designations. So I don't think anyone here really relies on that. And that's not, I mean, the one I mentioned isn't really the only conflict. As a zoning board, if somebody wants to appeal a planning board decision, they would go to the zoning board, where he sits. So he would be overseeing his own decision. The same with the health department. It doesn't work that way. And I just want you to really consider that, because you folks are the ones that can decide whether or not we have this conflict or not. Or, I mean, if you can't make a decision, you can put it off and check with town council, but I'm just urging you to not let this perpetuate. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you. And that is on the agenda this evening. Yes, there is an agenda item that the town administrator will speak to. Anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay. Next is other business under A, Adams ADA Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan, presented by BRPC. Okay.
Yes, we have Andy McKeever here from BRPC, who did this very fine plan in front of you. And he's prepared out a copy. Oh, great.
Oh,
That's okay.
Thank you.
I knew that was, that's great.
A draft one out there.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure we're all working on the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, stand proud. Yeah.
So do we just plug in?
Yeah. Which I know doesn't make sense. It is not. Is your PowerPoint separate from the plan that they have?
Yeah, it's different.
You would have to wait for the TV.
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling, but it's not.
See what they set up for Zoom.
But the control isn't, it isn't allowing anything otherwise. Do you mind if I do touch your computer? I apologize. Sure. Sure, Joe. Thank you for your help. I appreciate that. I don't know why it needs to be open.
All right, Andy, why don't you get us started? Do you have a copy to go off of, or
Well, that,
why don't we just get us started?
yeah,
Use one of these copies as they're going through it.
yeah, I have a copy of the plan. I was just gonna, I have
Okay.
my PowerPoint, I'll just start talking through it and,
All right, sounds.
without the screen. So, anyways, my name is Andy McKeever. I'm a community planner with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. So just to tell you about the Planning Commission, we're a region-wide office empowered by the Massachusetts legislature. We serve the 32 cities and towns in Berkshire County only on a wide range of planning, long-term planning. We help communities, organizations, leaderships, anybody really operating in this sort of civic atmosphere in Berkshire County. We are controlled by a full commission which has representatives of every town in the county. We divide our work into a lot of different types of things. I'm in the community planning department, so we do a lot of like master plans. We do open space and recreation plans. We also do these ADA plans. We have a community housing, a community development housing program, which does a lot of home rehab programs. We have a data and information services. You might be familiar with a lot of the data services that are out there with GIS. I think that might be on your agenda today. We have economic development department. We have environmental and energy. We have public health. We have transportation, and then we have our administration team. So through the Massachusetts Office of Disability awarded a grant to the town of Adams to work with us and conduct an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. So to understand the American with Disabilities Act, it's a civil rights law, and that proactively requires cities and towns to make sure that they eliminate all of the barriers that are in place to access services or goods and services. So if somebody wanted to attend this meeting, you have to make sure it's in an accessible place. So the Title II is the one that is specific to the cities and towns. And if you're a city or town with more than 50 employees, you are required to maintain one of these ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. So the self-evaluation, that is a process where you go through all of the programs and services and you identify and inventory all of the barriers that exist. A transition plan is you take all those and you create a priority list of what to address and when you can address it over time. And so the Department of Justice recommends that these plans are updated every 3 years. So the reason why these are important is because, yeah, it is a legal requirement that communities have these.
and that they are making sure that their services are accessible. But these plans also really help with your long-term capital spending. So you understand what types of accessibility upgrades are needed in different facilities over time, so you can kind of plan ahead for those. It's also having one of these plans is a prerequisite for funding through the Massachusetts Office on Disability. So once you create one of these plans, you are now eligible to apply for the implementation grants with MOD, and therefore some of these capital projects that you're looking at, MOD will be a resource for those. And then it's also important because the Adams demographics show that it's important. It's approximately 17.5% of residents have a disability, according to the census, and that's self-identified. So that's not going to count people who don't self-identify, and that's not going to count people who have maybe a short-term disability. So, and then lastly, it's important because facilities, parks, buildings, if they are designed to be accessible, then they're more usable and enjoyable for everyone. So that's kind of the overview of what the plan is. So the way we create the plan is, we start by looking at what town services are provided. So we talk to, town leadership. We review all the written policies that are in place to see, what's being provided and is it sufficient. We look at all of the town controlled public spaces. So we do site visits to all of the town buildings and all of the town parks. And then we did evaluation of the town websites for web content accessibility guidelines. So when we evaluate properties, we follow two guidance documents. One is the 2010 ADA standards, which is the federal, those are the design standards that the federal government put out that basically say these are the things, if you have them, you need to have, things have to be this measurement or, designed a certain way in order to be accessible. And then we also use the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, 521 CMR, which is the state building code for accessibility. So I use them both to cross-reference them because they're mostly the same, but if you have something that is addressed in both of them and they're slightly different, the more stringent one is the one that is applicable. And then there are some items that are addressed in the ADA, but not 521, and vice versa. So, and then we follow the Department of Justice's sort of priorities when we look at these. The first priority is the approach and entrance. That's your parking. Make sure you have parking and you have a way to get into the facility. The second one is the access to goods and services. So that's going to be like your counters, anywhere where you're providing service. We look at toilet rooms. That's the third priority. Public toilet rooms. There's specific design standards for those. Make sure people in a wheelchair or some other have some type of disability are able to use it. And then the last one is access to phones and water fountains. Phones, it's a little outdated because there's not many payphones around here anymore, but that was really kind of the intent to make sure that everyone can use phones as well. So that's kind of the overview of it. So I just kind of highlight some of the sort of findings as we went through in here. So we looked at the town policies. So the ADA requirements have that you need to have a responsible person to oversee ADA related matters, also known as an ADA coordinator. Town has that. Town needs to have a grievance policy, has that, and a public notice of non-discrimination, which it does have.
Just interrupt you. Could you tell me what page this would begin at that you're alluding to now?
So town policies, that's going to be
The index, I could find it, but
so the administrative requirements. Let's see,
Page 13.
13.
13,
okay, thank you.
So those are the administration. Yeah, and then the next section is the policies and procedures that are in place. So, and then a public notice and non-discrimination. So those are the requirements. Adams has fulfilled all of those. then there's some of the best practices that are recommended by the Massachusetts Office on Disability. One of the best practices is to really have a town-wide ADA policy that addresses a lot of things like effective communications, transportation, fees, accommodation and procedure for if somebody wants accommodation. Adams has one of those, and I want to point out that I've done a lot of these, and Adams is only the second community that I've seen that actually had a full formal policy that addressed all these matters. So I want to commend the town for that. It's a really good policy. It's well written too. So another recommendation is the Commission on Disabilities, which the town does not have. So I would recommend that the town look to start a Commission on Disabilities who can oversee a lot of the recommendations in this plan, but also things that go beyond this plan. If you have somebody who can start looking at what you want to do if you want to do accessible trails, or if you want to have more accessible technology, they can really be a guiding light on those type of things. And then the Massachusetts Office on Disability likes to see with snow removal programs. They like to see, so most towns, they delegate the snow sidewalk removal to the property owners. But you got to recognize not all property owners have the ability to clear their sidewalks. So there's a program that MOD uses, cites as sort of a reference point in Somerville, which is they partner with the local school and they have the youth come out to specific addresses. They're kind of partnered with it and they shovel for them. So that would be a program that you could also do. And then I always like to just suggest, providing staff training opportunities on accommodation. Massachusetts Office on Disability and the New England ADA Center both have a significant number of trainings that can be very broad about the ADA and accessibility into some very specific things for individual staff's sort of responsibility. So just definitely recommend that as well. So when we looked at the buildings, and Adams is among the buildings in very good shape. I think it's clear that, for years, this town has definitely taken their ADA responsibility seriously. There's nothing really egregious that stands out. It's in a really good shape. The town is definitely taking care of their property. So the library, I only saw a few minor improvements to the bathroom. The door was too heavy. There's a requirement that you can't require more than 5 pounds of pressure. So you can adjust the closer on that. There's a coat hook, it was out of reach ranges, and the toilet paper dispenser didn't comply with where it was. So very minor stuff there. The library also noticed that it does have an accessible parking on the side of the road, that you can notice that the road is starting kind of in the curb cut starting to get a little worn. So that could be, for accessibility there, you might want to just keep an eye on making sure that is kept. So Memorial Middle School, we did look at that. The biggest, we only really looked at the space where town meeting takes place in the gym. So we kept it to that. And my understanding is that there's a partnership with the developer, and so that property is lined up. But we wanted to make sure that for people attending town meeting, again, this is probably no surprise to you. This kind of slopes to try to get into the building. They're not compliant. There's excessive both a cross slope and the slope to get in there. So reworking on that parking would probably be a priority there. And then throughout in the various parts of the building, there's thresholds to doors that the limit is a 1/4 inch vertical width on a threshold. So some of those should have to be replaced. We looked at Adams Station. Not much there. The signs to the bathrooms they're on the door. They should be on the latch side of the door. So those should just be moved. And then under the sink, the drainage pipes, those are exposed and those can get hot. And so if somebody's in a wheelchair, they could ding their legs on them and get injured. So you want to put the covers on those. we did stop up to go to an outdoor center. No recommendations. That place is beautiful. So, registry of deeds. The wheelchair lift was out of service when we were there. That basically renders that space. Without that, the space is not accessible. So there should be a high priority to fix that. The counters are also a little bit too high, so you would want to try to do a renovation there. There's no audible visual alarm system, so that's probably a big project that would take a lot. And then there's a lot of doorknobs in there, which those are not compliant. They need to be lever sets because anybody who has trouble grasping or twisting with a wrist, they won't be able to access those spaces. So switching out those doorknobs for lever sets. Police department, again, only a small accessible place for where the public goes. Our recommendation here is just to add that van accessible spot, and there's one spot next to the police department. There's no real parking close to it, and it's kind of a steep. So try to create a pedestrian route into the building. That would be what we'd say there. This building, I think, one of the biggest challenge you have sort of coming up right now is how to deal with your accessible parking and entrance. You have kind of two aspects going on. Like the stairs out front are sort of they're kind of in a little bit of disrepair. They're going to need to be worked on. And then in back, where the route that goes from the parking spot into the building, where you have the push button opener, that the slopes in the concrete, those are starting to kind of shift. So those are getting out of compliance there. And then the parking lot itself is kind of sloped on a hill. So I think, given that you have sort of multiple things, I think you'll really have to take a look at sort of what you want to do to address access to the building, but be aware that with that back entrance sort of where it is, that could become problematic. So, and then there's some signs throughout the building that are not located in predictable places that you could, or they're not tactile. So you could just replace those signs. Again, some minor bathroom upgrades. So, for example, this bathroom down here, there's a trash bin that is right next to the toilet. That limits anyone's ability, if they were in a wheelchair, to side load onto it. So that trash can, you can just get rid of that and just do one of those wall mounted ones. So that's like kind of the minor upgrades you could do. So, and then you have inaccessible bathrooms, which you need to put signs in there directing people to where this accessible one is. Visitor center, didn't really find a lot there. The curb ramps are starting to show some signs of wear, so just be aware of that, and make sure that those can be addressed so they don't fall into any disrepair. I would suggest an automatic door opener on the rail trail side of it. My understanding was there was putting one in on the front entrance, so I'm saying you should put one on the back too for people coming off the rail trail or from Adams Station. That would be a nice accessibility upgrade as well. We did notice some inconsistent signage, which could be, either things in the way or, not an appropriate place. And then there was a few things that were sort of out of reach ranges. So, the parks, I'm going to go through every one of them because that would take way too long. But throughout the park system, a lot of what we see is common, and this is common throughout Berkshire County too, is places that don't have accessible parking, no accessible routes to all the elements. We see a lack of adaptive equipment, ground level, playground equipment. Accessible seating is not always consistent. Picnic tables and trash cans, they're often placed in the middle of grass, but away from an accessible route, so there's no way to get to it. And so those are kind of the general things that we look at. We sort of notice a lot. I will say with Adams, again, very aware of accessibility in this town. With Renfrew has accessible paths throughout it to all the places. Russell Field has accessible paths. The new dog park has an accessible path. So it's a lot of. There are other communities that do not have any parks that have accessible paths through them. So again, I'd like to really commend the town over the years for making sure that these things are a priority. So overall, though, I think we did look at Bow Field. Our understanding was that there was that the future use of that property is sort of going to be considered, especially during the upcoming OSRP. So we did look at that pretty thoroughly just to give the town a really good sense of what needs to be done. So we looked at all the buildings. There would need to be a significant investment in that property. So, but for accessibility. So if you do use it for sort of some type of public service or something like that, those are the things you should be aware of. And they're all detailed in there. Also say to add accessible parking at Reed. They don't have, it's a nice playground. There's a playground that is not an accessible path, so you can do things as well, but there is an accessible playground. We have a ball field there, so I think it's worth creating some accessible parking there. And then parking signs we saw, so those have to be high enough so somebody can see them over the cars. So we did find there were some signs that were too low, and then also you need to have a van accessible spot. So you got to make sure that at these parks you have a wide enough parking spot and aisle access that can accommodate a van. And then lastly, we looked at the town websites. I'm not going to go too much in depth with them because we use this website called SortSite, which is an accessibility checker, and that kind of gives you a lot of the back end. It does like a back end review of it, and it looks for sort of coding type things. So we were providing the town with that full report on there. But in general, web assets, what you should be aware of is that the federal government, the Department of Justice, did adopt a rule for web content accessibility guidelines. These are that these sort of these are the same standards that you look at when you're looking at websites on whether you can use it with a screen reader or if people can see if there's enough color contrast, if there's alternate text, if there's links, you have to make sure those are clear. So just saying click here, say you can find this report at this location, be more specific about that. And so on those, that's a report you can kind of just give to the website vendors. You can make it. And then my other recommendation on the web content is to make anyone who's posting these websites sort of aware of these guidelines and the accessibility tools that are out there to make that you can check before you post something online to make sure that it is actually perceivable and everyone can access it. So that's the quick overview. Well, just a quick overview of it. I'm welcome to open it up to discussion, questions, anything.
All right, questions from the board, Ann?
Nothing right this second.
All right, Jay?
Just a couple minor ones here. One thing I do want to just a comment. I do like how you guys do include kind of a transition plan on, when some of these things could be done. Kind of give us an idea going forward, which ones need to be priorities and which ones not so much. Just do when you can, sort of thing. I guess my biggest question is there anything that we need to immediately address? When we're finding ourselves out of compliance, where it could be a major issue. Besides probably Bow Field, and that went in some of the town hall.
Well, since Bow Field is not, you're not providing any service there right now. That's sort of more. I would say that's more of a long term. I don't think that you can use that sort of in when you determine what you're going to use for the future of that property. I would say when we did the transition plan, what we did is there's a lot of like the smaller things of the sort of lower cost items, things that you probably wouldn't need to go through a design work to do. So those are sort of the priorities on it. when you look at some of the sort of larger projects, like we talked about the coming into the entrance, you're going to need design work for it, and so MOD doesn't pay for design work. So you would need some more time to that to bring in an engineer and architects to sort of design a lot of these. So I think the priority would be just some of these lower cost items when you have sinks that just need covers on them. In order new covers, new lever sets to get those things taken care of first. But overall, you don't have any. You're not providing any programs or services in inaccessible spaces right now, and so I think you do have some accessible spaces you can use if you needed to. So if there was an issue with this building and you had to hold your meetings at the library, you still have that option. So as far as like pressing that you should go take care of now, no, but you should be taking, should be looking at trying to go over time, just make sure these things are tightened up. So
Appreciate that. And then one other question. The Commission on Disabilities, is there a recommendation? Should that be town employees or should it be citizens? Any guidelines in terms of coming up with a commission?
yeah, I mean, I would recommend obviously somebody people who have experience as having a disability themselves or being a caregiver for someone with a disability. Somebody with that lived experience is probably the best. I would say the community is probably the better spot to do that. Try to have people from the community really sort of be behind that, and then they can be the sort of voice, and they can report to the town like this is if you do these things now, this will greatly improve our experiences.
Good. Thank you so much.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I have a few questions. First of all, I was unaware that the rift at the Register of Deeds isn't working. I mean, that's been put in not too long ago. How long has that been out of order?
I'm not sure when it was installed. It was in recent memory. It was. When you were there, did you get any idea of how long it's been out of service? This is news to us.
I believe there's actually a date on it, but I don't know if it's in this photo or not. So I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. That's fine. If we Ken, if you can look into that and see what the story is there.
That should have been brought to our attention as soon as it wasn't working, because I'm wondering if there's still a warranty on that.
So next meeting, if you could. Okay. Action. Yeah. Thank you.
And also, this being a federal program, and I ask this every meeting now, are the funds going to be there for this?
Yes, because this is state.
This is
Yep.
well,
The ADA is the federal legislation.
Right, okay.
The Massachusetts Office on Disability is the one that funds.
Okay, so they're funding it.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly, and yeah,
because it was put into effect by, I believe, President Bush, and therefore it was a federal to begin with. So the state gets money given their way from the federal government to spend, or this is coming out of the Healy administration?
Well, this comes all from the state government. So the federal ADA is the federal legislation that makes this requirement throughout the country. Massachusetts also has, as I said, the Massachusetts Architectural Board also has their accessibility guidelines. So the state created the Massachusetts Office on Disability specifically to address these type of matters. So this is an ADA self-evaluation plan, but it's also just an accessibility plan. So Massachusetts Office on Disability it's all state funds for all that.
Yeah, and my quick suggestion would be, if I had the means of what I thought should be a priority, I would think it would be the parking out here, because this is the hub of the town, and that slants down. I never really liked that, and that sidewalk is buckling, and and during the winter that is icy, because it's slanted the wrong way and all that kind of stuff. So I would suggest that that would be something that, you know, if I had any say to it, that would be the priority. And you brought up another point about sidewalks being shoveled by townspeople. We do have, I believe it's within 24 hours after a storm but we've got an elderly population, and our sidewalks are in poor condition throughout this town. There hasn't been much attention given to them over the years, and people now, I know a few people tripped this year because their foot caught and they fell and broke their wrist, and one other person hit their face and, you know, was banged up pretty good. So that makes it difficult in this town, because we do have people on wheelchairs I see going in town, and, you know, it's a bumpy ride, in other words. And also, when you say disabilities, and it was 17%, I'm just taking for granted they're physical disabilities. They're not mental disabilities, disorientation, or anything like that. It's typically physical, right?
Well, that is a census number, so it is sort of self-reported. But the census does categorize. They do have
Like reading disabilities and
yes, exactly. So there's cognitive disabilities that are included in it. But again, this is only people who are responding to the survey, and whether they feel comfortable sharing that information. That's sort of up to them. So I would, also add Adams is not unlike rest of Berkshire County, where the population is aging, and as you age, you're more likely to sort of develop a disability, or at least have some, or a temporary, a temporary disability that sort of prevents you from doing sort of the physical pieces of it. But it just does incorporate, that 17% does incorporate cognitive disabilities as well.
yeah. And do all signs need to be Braille also?
Tactile Braille, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that's all I have, but thank you for doing this for us. The Berkshire Regional Planning has always been at our side and throughout the community. I just hope that your funding is, because it's going to be iffy this year, as I think you know, and we as a board know, with community block grants and all the things that go along with federal funding.
Mm.
So just thanks for what you do.
Appreciate it. Hope it's helpful for you. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Now, you were mentioning something about in one community that they got the students in schools to go down to help. How do they determine which help? How would they determine which houses that have some of the disability that can't do it? Because you don't want just somebody saying, "Oh, I can't do it." They're perfectly healthy. They just don't want to have it themselves.
I can't speak to the details as to how they verify the particular addresses, but I know with a lot of these programs, they put it out to the community, and people self-report, like, yeah, I can't do this. I would like some assistance, and then those addresses are sort of kept together and then paired with sort of students or other community members who come out and clean it. And you can do it with a volunteer basis, or even maybe some type of stipend or some type of credit or something.
A Leo Club, Joe, in the town.
Yeah.
That would be something that could be brought up to them for the winter.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
To help the people that actually cannot get out there on their own.
One thing I'd like to say to the board members is that people aren't able to hear us. And we need, I think, to speak into the microphone. And I see everybody's a distance away, and, I'm getting so many calls about, we can't even watch the meetings because we can't hear anything. Our hearing is buzzing in the background. So I don't know if it will help, but it can hurt. I mean, we're such a distance away from our microphones that it just doesn't seem to be working out that well. So that's why I'm
No problem.
crouched right
Do it.
above it to see if it helps.
Okay.
And I would just like to piggyback on what Ann said. This community is 50% of the housing stocks is rentals. So you have to make sure as the person that owns the rental property are, courteous and do that. And I don't know for a fact that they're not doing it, but that's something that makes us a lot different than a lot of communities for our housing stock. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Town Administrator, who will take the responsibility of this plan? We can answer tonight, but we should provide this plan to give someone the leadership of this. I'm not sure if it's Community Development Office when we get that new person or with their new Town Administrator, but we need to have somebody in front of us as we go through the budget time and all that. Good.
Got it.
Got it? Add it to the list. All right, Andy, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have item B under old business, ratification of appointment of David Reinmiller to the position of Code Enforcement Officer. Ken?
Okay, this was tabled at our last meeting. I'm going to ask you to keep it on the table, but I'll give you a brief report. We had our town labor council look at this. He called me, we thought we could get a written advisory from him, but what he told me was that the State Ethics Commission lawyer was very clear about what Mr. Reinmiller has to do to comply with the state's laws. But he felt that some of the documents weren't quite right yet. So he suggested two ways of moving forward. One is for me to go through it carefully with him and make sure the documents are compiled properly and given to the proper agencies. And two, if we want a legal opinion, we would refer it back to our general town council, that's KB Law, and they can write an opinion, and then that would stand up with the Ethics Commission if we wanted to go back there. So that's where we stand with it, and I hope to have this straightened out and back in front of you next time we meet.
Could you repeat your first statement, first sentence that you read? Could you just repeat what you read, please? I don't have the.
Oh, I didn't read it at all. So what I said was, we referred this to Town Labor Council.
Right.
We have two sets of words.
Yeah.
Labor Council and a General Council.
But you spoke to the Labor Council, right?
I spoke to the Labor.
Could you tell me some of the situations that he saw might be iffy?
Well,
The
most difficult one is serving as code enforcement officer and sitting on the Board of Health.
Right.
Could be problematic.
Yeah.
And so that's when we have to look carefully at. There's also a Form 20, I think it's called 20D, Section 920D disclosure that has to be signed off by the appropriate authorizing agency or officer, I think, which makes the person a special municipal employee. But remember, I haven't gone through this carefully, so I'm just speaking off the top of my head and what council told me.
Okay. Yeah. Because I have some deep concerns personally. So what do we need here, just to table this to our next regular meeting? Is that what we should do, Mr. Chairman?
Well, we haven't taken it off the.
Right. No.
Okay, we haven't taken it off.
On the table.
Okay.
So I have some more work to do with the employee, and I'm probably, I think maybe the best course of action would be to refer to general counsel for an opinion. They will have something in writing that we can look at.
So that's, our general counsel would be KP.
That would be KP. But
Okay.
I'll follow up on that. I'll look at it more closely myself.
Okay. So this is tabled?
Yep. And Ken will continue to work on it and get back to us the next meeting. Anything else? Next is item C, which is a review and approve one-day liquor license application from the American Legion, 164 Spark Ave, to serve at 171 Buckland Road on Saturday, August 30th at 2 p.m. for a private event.
Through the chair, could you explain a little bit about this to me? Because I know that we had some questions about liability and it's come back. Well, how did it make it back for a vote?
Oh, I asked our executive assistant to follow up with the ABCC. I think the original question was, can the American Legion serve off-site?
Right,
I personally was familiar with, the service agencies serving on-site, outside of the
that's
premises,
right.
but I wasn't served, and that's what we discussed, if you remember. So I asked Brianna to look into it, and I think she has a report for us.
Yep, they are totally legally able to do that according to the ABCC as well as our council.
Okay, so who's holding the liability? The people that are staging it? Or
I
the,
have to go through their application, but they are able to apply for a one-day liquor license in order to have it at a private event. It does appear that the folks who are holding the event applied for that liability insurance, but I would need to go back and double check that. This came in while I was out on maternity.
okay, yeah, and also, when you're serving, alcohol, the American Legion, they do a great job and a great service for this community, but they got to make sure that they're not over serving. If you can understand what I'm saying, they must have somebody who's
Well, that safety plan is a standard part of all of our one-day application.
Right,
forms.
right.
So that's a part that anyone who serves off premises anywhere on any of the one-day licenses that you've ever seen.
yeah, right, yeah,
That safety plan is included.
yeah, right. You have somebody, I forget what the wording is, some,
TIPS certification,
Oh, there you go.
procedure certification, and then a safety plan to mitigate the risks or possibilities of over-serving or serving underage individuals.
okay,
Is what our application asks for.
because it seems like there could be dual liability here with the
Yeah,
property owner and the American Legion.
I'll double check who put their insurance in,
Okay.
who were provided insurance.
Okay,
paperwork.
I have a question, and I know that when it's a caterer that goes out on private property, that they have to notify the police department 48 hours before. Is that also so it's just if it's a private caterer?
Because a caterer does not
If
need
we give them the license, they don't need to do that?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
What is the status of that? Have they come forward to us and we've approved the one-day license, or is that still in
Well, this is
process?
still on the table right now. You all, it looks like you approved a different one-day license at one of your past meetings for them to do something on their premises.
On the premise
But I
outside.
think what folks are kind of failing to conceptualize is their premises refers to what is licensed.
Yeah.
So the fact that they are moving on their parking lot, that is no different than them going down the road. It is outside of their premises. That is why they came for one day. So them being on their parking lot or being in North Adams, it is all outside of their premises. So just conceptualizing that it is not property lines, it is licensed area. So the license that you all already approved for them is essentially the same thing that we are
That's
doing
the
here.
one we approved a few weeks ago.
Correct.
yeah, this was the first time that I've been on the board that I can remember one of this sort.
Yeah, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it. In fact, I wasn't sure if they needed one because it was a private event on a private property. So that was sort of my hang up with it. And then their status as a nonprofit, meaning they can serve liquor, so it's not just a beer and wine. So this is not something that we see often. So that's why there was a little bit of extra sort of attention given to this to make sure that everything's in compliance. But treat this just like when the Bounty Fair applies for a one-day license to serve an event in the theater, except it's even more closed off than that because it's a private event, so that's even less liability because it's not a publicly ticketed event.
Yeah, because the last thing I'll say, any party that usually you go to that's on somebody's private property, they don't maybe, they supply the beer, they got a big tub and you grab a beer and that type of thing. So this just just caught my eye. But if it's legal, there's nothing wrong with it.
And if anything, it's actually safer than that because you have someone who is tip certification trained to make sure that people aren't, being their own bartender and overserving themselves.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there's probably some wild card beer somewhere else,
Yeah, it could be, and that's the responsibility
Right.
of the American Legion to assume as the alcohol vendors on site. If folks are bringing their own alcohol, it is up to them to shut that down and let folks know that endangers their own liquor license.
Okay.
But it's no different than anybody who's ever had a wedding. That's part of the game. As someone who's a bar manager at a wedding
Yeah.
venue, I've had to say, hey, I see cans of things that I did not serve to you, and I do not want to see those again.
Yep.
Hand it over.
Thank you.
Bree, just as a generalized question for the one-day liquor licenses, is the town liable for anything that happens at those events?
That is why they provide their liquor liability insurance.
Yep.
And then this is like you all noted, sort of doubly insured because it's a private event on private property. So presumably they have some sort of homeowners insurance, renters insurance, whatever that situation is. And then on top of that, we have the liquor liability insurance of the American Legion.
It's all on the applications when
Correct.
they submit it.
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So if we were to approve this, you're saying the property owner has to list that they do have liability?
No, because the property owner is not the one applying for the liquor
Okay,
license.
so it's just the Legion.
Mhm.
It is.
Yep, I'll look and see who provided their liability insurance. But there's plenty of insurance to go around.
Okay, thank you.
Is this ready to be approved this evening?
I feel that it is, but if you all want there to be further follow-up by anyone, you are welcome to leave it tabled. There is time until the event goes, so it's at your discretion.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure? To approve or to hold it? I don't think we have any open questions at this point.
I don't think so, but I do think that it is currently still on the table, so I do think that someone would need to make a motion to take it off the table prior to you voting on it.
Right. Do you remember who put it?
I was not here, so unfortunately I do not.
I will make a motion to take it off the table so we can vote on it. To take off the table the review and approval of the one-day liquor license application from the American Legion, 160 Forest Park Avenue, to serve at 171 Buckland Road on Saturday, August 30th at 2 p.m. for a private party. And that when it comes off table, that we will make a vote.
Motion by Ann, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jay, any discussion?
Yes, I would like within that motion that we know who the liability holder is. It has to be perhaps the American Legion, right? Because they're the server.
Yeah, so if the American Legion is the one who is taking out that insurance,
Yeah.
All sense would tell me that it is then under their insurance, but I can certainly send a follow-up to you all when I have the chance to get my bearings in that
Okay.
application and
Yeah.
see the name on it. But for all common sense would tell me that that's what it is. So you, certainly, I think you can take this off the table without adding to the motion, but just in your motion, should you approve this license, say contingent upon review of insurance.
Okay, sounds good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, abstentions, unanimous decision. Okay, board, like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license application from the American Legion, 160 Forest Park Avenue, to serve at 171 Buckland Road on Saturday, August 30th at 2 p.m. for a private event, with the stipulation that we find out who their liability is from the American Legion.
So to verify the appropriate insurance has been documented or something. Right. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous decision. We got that taken care of. Next is item D, discuss and determine salary range for town administrator. Karen?
Yes, Rick White, our consultant, Blue White Associates, is getting ready to advertise the position. And you may remember that he recommended a salary of $125,000 to $150,000. And he needs to know what the board would like to advertise as the salary range so that he can go out and do that.
What is your recommendation?
My recommendation is up to $150,000, depending on qualifications and experience.
Discussion from the board.
Yeah, I want a real read. How much money does this town have? Do we have 150 put aside to give, if we posted at that, to come up with that money?
Here's what I think right now, Joe. The budget, the town has appropriated $125,000 for the position. But by the time you fill it, by the time you fill the position, there may be enough to pay up to that amount. It's an extra $25,000.
Yeah. Now, I asked at the town meeting, all the bills were paid that we up to date, but there were still some outstanding bills. And I'd like to know the second week in July, because if there's anything that needs to be paid that we didn't have the cash at the time, because I was a little leery when the money came from the taxpayers for another $175,000. That's the first time since I've been on the board that has happened. So that brought kind of a red flag to me that we have some outstanding bills that we're going to need to pay. And so we'll have a special town meeting. I don't know that, but that's what I assume. So I would like to know after the second week of July what we have that we need to pay that we haven't paid from fiscal year 2025.
Now, what typically happens at the end of the fiscal year is we have outstanding purchase orders. And in fact, we're going to discuss that in a minute when we take up the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission intermunicipal agreements. So that is what is encumbered. So the truth, if you have a purchase order or a contract, funds get encumbered at the end of the fiscal year.
I understand that.
And then they get paid out up to the middle of July.
Yeah.
It's the $175,000 in my recollection is the money that was appropriated to the reserve account, which is a typical appropriation of the town, but I don't understand what other appropriations might be out there that we haven't made or taken.
Well, I'm thinking about police overtime. I'm thinking about snow and removal. I'm thinking of other things that overtime for the highway department this year. And so I'd like to know that because we're short on money in this town. I'm going to.
How short are we? Where's the figure that you believe we are short on?
Your son said in the town meeting thing, the last thing he said is that we're going to be tight on money. He brought a nice picture. I don't have it with me, but his next sentence after it was that we're going to have to be fiscally responsible. And I believe you, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So, $150,000. I'm going to get back to the subject.
Yeah.
So you're saying right now that we have 125 appropriated, but when the new fiscal year, which is going on now, we'll be able to find $25,000. Okay, we should be able to with the new fiscal year. There should be no problem with that. So
His current salary is,
You're not paying me a
we're not paying him $5,000,
and I'm not taking
well,
health
not
insurance.
technically health insurance. So
Yeah.
by the time we get to that day, with current salary being less, the health insurance will have that $25K.
yeah,
They'll pay that by October when that person starts.
yeah. But then going along with just that salary, we're going to have to deal with how many vacation days he's going to get, how many sick days, how many personal days, how many times. I don't want anything to happen like we did with Jay and Crystal, giving them carte blanche for 25 weeks, every Friday off, without being told about it. So those are the things that the salary is your base salary, but on top of it, there's a topping like on an ice cream sundae. You know, you get the ice cream and then you put cream, cherry, and maybe shots. So that all adds up. So that's all I'm getting to. But as far as $150,000, I mean, I don't know. That's a lot of money. I mean, I'm an older person, and boy, when I see these salaries that are going on in this community, it blows my mind.
And the problem is, it's not our community. We're trying, you know,
We're
other
competing with other communities.
Yeah, well,
and they're given a lot more than we are. So,
Is there any way that it can be put out there that the salary would be for anywhere from the 125 to the 150?
That's typically how it's.
Is that how it's written
arranged,
up?
Yeah.
yeah, with qualifications.
Because we might
Right.
feel that we find somebody, well, okay, we think he's really good, or she, pardon? Or she? Oh, yes, or she, I'm not ruling that, that's right, that he or she is, you know.
Right.
Or we have one that, maybe the better female or male, decided to go elsewhere, so now we have this other person,
Yeah.
you know, that maybe that person we don't think he's up to that higher point, price-wise.
Yeah.
So it's a way, that's how it'd be done, that the price
Depending on
ranges.
qualifications and experience, and then,
Okay.
you'll enter into negotiation.
Well, I know, when we had the lawyer on screen, he was saying that with what we have and how we have to compete with all these other communities and what they're offering, that we might have, not have a great
Right.
representation to choose from, which we don't know yet.
Right, yes. What I was told by Mr. White is that going to the east of us, the assistants are making that kind of money.
Sure.
So if you want to attract them to come out here, you got to get in the ballpark.
So I can comment a little bit. I attended a newly elected select board member conference in Devon's a couple weeks ago. And I did a little research out there and asking around other communities. And I will say that the 125 people were surprised to even hear that low of a number, because there's smaller communities that are paying significantly higher. And I know Adams, Berkshire County, we're in a tough spot anyway to try to attract people out towards this direction. I know the East has a little more of a pool to choose from. But I think having a salary range is very important. I'm not saying that putting this out there for 150,000 would attract and make it so that the position's 150,000. But I think we have to make ourselves marketable, because we are a small fish in a big pond when it comes to something like this. So that's just some of the feedback that I got from
Yeah,
other communities.
I think you'll remember that Ray Barrington only had 2 finalists, and they were up at around 160,000. He's got to go back out for a consultant and advertise because they're satisfied with 2 finalists.
Yeah, one thing I've seen, because we've gone through, John and myself, this process quite a bit, you get people that they put in for a test to see how, if they could get, like, you know, an interview, like for stepping stone, and then they're interviewed and they decide to drop out. And that happens a lot in the professional field, where people put in and it's a tester to see, you know, if their resume is strong. So, and they get chosen. And I know this has happened to us. They back out at the last minute. They say, well, I'm not interested right now, and that type of thing. So I think you have to watch out for it. And I saw in Dalton, your hometown, where the push was for, they have a different company doing it. I forget who it was. And they brought up, like we always bring up, that the Berkshires, that, you know, what we stand for, the beauty that's within this area is a selling point. And I think more of a selling point perhaps for someone for a town administrator that has a young family, nice area to raise your children, and that type of thing. So I'm for a range. I like Ann's suggestion about 125 to 150, depending on your credentials and, showing us that you can do the job. And I realize that it's a bad market, but I was quite encouraged when Mr. White said that there's a real push now where people are getting more civic minded, that are graduating, that are coming back to want to work in a local, within towns and that type of thing. Because at one time it was so popular, my generation, But anyways, I agree with Ann, put a range in there, but you put it at 150, then they're going to ask for 160.
Right.
I still could.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we put the salary range at $125,000 to $150,000 in our search for a new town administrator.
We have a motion by Ann. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jay. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I was just wondering, should there be something added by qualifications or what they've done in the past rather than just give that range? Because somebody's going to say, well, I'll do it for 150. I won't do it for 125, but I've never held a position like this. So should there be something within the motion, do you believe, Ken, that going by qualifications?
Depending on qualifications and experience.
Right.
Okay, so Ann and Jay, you good? Okay. All right, so that's been amended. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
I
Any opposed? Unanimous decision. For the screening committee, if each board member, and Joe, you've already done this, if you could send a name to Ken that a person, a community member, whoever it may be, that you feel would be a good person to be on the screening committee, that will go through all the resumes, that will interview individuals, and they will provide the board with 3 to 4 finalists for us to interview. However, we get to go look at the resumes, we can always pick somebody, interview if we'd like to. So we all send Ken a name, and we can get that committee put together.
Well, I was told by Bree that, she'd get mine in because I was a little late for my second one. So we have other members who haven't submitted names yet.
Well, we have those we submitted for the, what was that for?
Community stakeholder interviews.
Interviews. Okay.
Community stake
That-
interviews.
Community stakeholder interviews. So if you remember when Mr. White was on the screen, he said there's sort of 2 different steps of this process. There are folks who are community stakeholders who he'd like to interview. He requested that each board member send me
Right.
the name of 2 individuals.
Right.
Yeah.
And folks surely did. And I have forwarded all of that information
Okay.
on to Mr. White.
Okay, so everyone, all 5 of us have put 2 names in.
Yep.
Okay,
So now this is new.
right.
So now since we have the salary settled, now we need to get out, they're gonna get out there and advertise, and we need to get that committee together. That we all submitted, 1 or 2 names is fine.
I did too. That's what I was told. And my last one was a little late because I was waiting for a response from someone.
Yeah.
And
Now we're gonna
This
accept,
is a different,
right.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is. election.
I know, yeah, right. They're gonna call us to talk, this wait, is that what we're
Yep,
getting at?
he
Individually and that type of thing?
Yep, he also asked me for all of your emails or anyone's phone numbers that I had. I know you came in and you gave me your phone number.
Yeah,
So I did, I sent that in a separate spreadsheet to Mr. White so that he can make the time to start interviewing you all as well.
okay.
Okay, all right, awesome. All right, so that is it for our old business. On our new business, the update on status of Cook Street Park and Dog Park. Ken?
Well, dog park is open. We haven't had any announcement about it with press of business in town meeting, but people they're using it and the doggy bags are there. So anybody wants to use it, by all means, John and I toured it just as it opened in the spring.
I never realized it was open.
Community development,
Usually we have some type of ribbon cutting or something.
because we still can if someone wants to
Yeah.
take that on. But there was still a sign that we wanted to get and maybe a chair or 2. but that was it. So the people are using it, so it's open.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Spread the word.
Yeah, right.
You know, so.
I was worried that we were having trouble getting liability insurance because, you know, you're having dogs and different sized dogs, like it had been brought up numerous times in an enclosed area. So I was wondering if that was the case. So I'm glad that it's open
They haven't heard
Okay.
any,
because I put that on the agenda because I didn't even know it was open.
yeah, we didn't have that usual, ribbon cutting ceremony or anything like that, but it's open.
Okay.
Yeah, very nice too. Check it out.
It's too nice for dogs.
So we have the opportunity to do a ribbon cutting if we'd like.
Yes,
Yeah, if someone wants to read on it, feel over with the,
I was wondering, has anybody been down there to make sure people are picking up after their dogs and that type of thing? Because that's an important aspect of a dog park, that people are going by the rules. And, you know, because I certainly don't see them going by the rules here in town. I've seen dogs doing their thing and the people just walking away. Matter of fact, I saw a guy doing it and he flipped me off. He said, F you, you know, and I'm just saying that.
You know, and I know from visiting other dog parks in the past, a lot of them kind of police themselves.
Yeah, they should be.
Volunteers and
yeah,
kind of taking the lead in some of that. So I'm sure there's going to be some community members that are going to take onus of
Right, I believe they should, right, because
Absolutely.
people that use a dog park are dog lovers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if anyone is interested in heading up a community effort to ensure that that place remains clean, please by all means. That's a wonderful I don't know, cause to fight for, I guess.
okay, anything else, on this? Here. Item B on new business is authorize amendments to the intermunicipal agreements with BRPC related to GIS services, slums and blight report, and economic development plan. Ken?
okay, I want to pass out, so I need to get a chance to get this to you sooner. I want to pass this out. Just a minute to look at it.
Watch that wire, Ken, when you go. Thank you. Yep. Going reverse now.
Ken, if you could just start to go through what these, so we can walk through these together.
Yes. Board, you might recall, prior to starting this ADA self-evaluation plan, I brought the grant to you and said, if you accept this grant, we're going to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to do this plan. Well, we do lots of work with the Regional Planning Commission, and we have 3 ongoing projects. One is for GIS support, that's Geographic Information Systems, and the Geographic Information Systems are using to map out our stormwater outflows. And we need that because we have to comply with federal regulations in regard to discharging stormwater into our waterways. And you will see that the original contract expired on June 30th, and the original contract amount was for $11,000, but we've only spent $1,200. So the Community Development Department is asking that the contract be carried over until the end of the next fiscal year, so we can finish up the mapping project. The second project is the Slums and Blight Report. Now, the Slums and Blight Report is very important because it makes us eligible for community development block grant funding, and that's almost done. Again, that contract expired on June 30th, and they're just asking for a couple of more months to finish that up. The third one is for economic development planning. Now, there was $10,000 appropriated for that, and about $7,200 was expended, and the rest went back into the general fund. And what the Community Development Department is asking for is authority to enter into a new intermunicipal agreement for economic development planning services And we met recently with Laura Brennan, and we used a lot of that money last year for Greylock Glen support, and I think this year, we're going to do a similar thing. In fact, more work with Greylock Glen.
Could you explain that a little bit when you said more work with Greylock Glen? What would
Sure.
that encompass?
Probably, looking at the website, we haven't gotten an exact scope of services from them yet, but let's just take a look what they used it on last year, okay? They included finishing touches on the exhibit housed within the south wing, corresponding exhibit on the Greylock Glen website. They also supported the Glen communication efforts, including quarterly newsletter, regular website updates, and occasional social media assistance.
Because I want to say when the Woodlands Partnership had their annual meeting up there, I want to say to a T that the people there were floored how beautiful that building was. They couldn't believe the nature of it and the scope of it. And as you mentioned earlier on, we had a PowerPoint presentation and it was going awry constantly. And the people that were doing the PowerPoint do it often. So the communication networks and things, yes.
I can comment on that. We
Yeah.
actually got through Mike's email the next day when I was in there. We got a notification from the internet provider that they had some issue, a pull down, some service issue, and it knocked out service to a large area. So it actually had nothing to do with the center, the center's wiring, or anything that we had control over. It was a server outage.
Right, because I made mention to the people there that this was done top notch on
Yeah.
wiring everything, but
I checked in with the organizer after the event, and
Yeah.
he noted that, so I looked into it, and that's what I found. So
okay,
happy to report it's not a building issue, not a wiring
Okay.
issue on our end.
right. And so, getting back to that, Ken, what do you think would be used for it now, other than you were just saying? I mean, if it wiring was good and stuff.
So one of the major issues is supporting the Greylock Glen Advisory Committee. So we're going to have a committee, it's got to come back. Remember, we discussed it.
Yeah, sure.
And it's going to need support. It's going to need staff support. So that's what we think one of the major proposals.
So you're going to need a staff person to oversee the advisory.
Essentially, they'll act like staff.
Well, I'm for that, but I'm still kind of shy about an advisory council. I mean, they can tell us what to do, but if we don't have the money to do it, I mean, good ideas are good ideas, but you have to have some capital to carry out those ideas. So we're going to be spending more up front for someone to be overseeing the advisory committee.
Yeah, the board still needs to discuss all that.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had an initial meeting, so.
This initial meeting. And remember, there are two other parts that we've got to
Right.
get going on. The glamping side and the lodge and conference center.
Yeah. Okay, and then if I could go back to slum and blight. Now, was this due? We didn't spend this money due to we didn't have enough people in community development. I mean, we could have, for slum and blight, we've got so much of it, and we only spent $1,402.08 out of $20,000 in the course of 1 year.
Yeah, and I don't really know the reason I didn't ask you for this synopsis. My guess, it could have been, it probably had something to do with our lack of staffing, but it may also have been to do with Regional Planning Commission staffing.
Right. So when it comes to community block grants, that's a federal program, so I'm hoping that it continues.
Yes.
And that brings me to another subject because this year we were supposed to get money from FEMA to do the Jordan Street culvert. Has anybody heard anything about that?
I know Donna's working on it, but I don't have exact status right now.
Because I know FEMA's cut things in North Adams for the flood chute, for culverts and that type of thing. So could you get an answer on whether FEMA's going to come forward with that money? Because it was promised to us. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, any further discussion, any questions?
Just a question for the economic development planning agreement. So that's $10,000 cost for us to the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, correct? And we're budgeted for
We're
that
budgeted.
next year. Yeah, so that.
Make sure I check that.
I think I remember it on there, but I wanted to make sure that that's part of the consulting fees. Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, I know, John, you've been involved with them, with this group, Berkshire Regional Planning, for quite a while, and I know that, you know, you had even brought it up yourself. How do they feel for funding from the federal government? A lot of their programs are funded by the feds.
We're very concerned, like everyone else is, that with federal funding, that a lot of the monetary requirements will be pushed to the states, but we just don't have anything concrete yet.
Okay.
But we're concerned.
Yeah, so it'd be up to the state to foot the bill, in other words. For a
Yeah,
lot
they
of
have
things.
it, or things are
Yeah.
going to happen. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Okay, anything else on item B? BRPC?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Just want to make sure you authorize the agreements.
Oh, yeah, yeah, hold on. Okay. All right, so the motion will be to authorize the BRPC to what?
Enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the amendments to the intermunicipal agreements with the BRPC related to GIS services, slum and blight report, and economic development planning.
Motion by Ann, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jay, any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous decision. And the final item this evening is new business C, review and approve one-day liquor license application for the Bounty Fair to serve at the Adams Theater, 27 Park Street, Adams, Mass. On Saturday, July 12th, from 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license application for the Bounty Fair to serve at the Adams Theater, 27 Park Street, Adams, Mass. On Saturday, July 12th, from 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m.
Motion by Ann, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous decision. And the last item on this evening's agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Motion by Ann, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous decision, this meeting has concluded.